welcome to the first ever Global Impact Virtual Conference hosted by ISTE Community Leaders. This has been an incredible day of just nonstop live sessions. So if you're just now joining us, welcome. If you've been with us all day, thanks so much for your participation. This experience is hopefully showcasing to you how remarkable educators worldwide are making a big impact in global education. My name is Kayla Holland, and I am part of the ISTE Community Leaders Global Impact Team. I am one of many people making today happen. There are incredible people, both on screen and off screen, really making today shine for you. And I am joining you from Charlotte, North Carolina, in the United States. I am excited to be your host for this session, Be an Accessibility Ally, Creating Accessible Classrooms. Our presenter for this session is Katie Fielding, and she's joining us from Virginia in the United States and is a dedicated STEM coach, having spent 13 years as a science teacher and 8 years as an instructional tech coach. Katie deeply understands the challenges and opportunities in integrating technology and STEM into teaching and learning practices. I have been waiting for this session all day long. So without further ado, I will give it over to Katie. Welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be the end of today. I went to several sessions and they've been so great. It started with the eTwins and now we're closing with me. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes, excellent.
All right. Hey everyone, I am going to get started and you're probably wondering, wow, she's like really sharing her screen and not just her slides. And that is because I want you to see the magic of PowerPoint Present Live. My session is all about accessibility, so it'd be very remiss of me to present without being accessible in my presentation style and approach. So I want to make sure that you have captioning in the language of your choice if you want it, and PowerPoint Live is a great tool to do that. So you can see here, I'm in the web version of PowerPoint. And if you're in the slideshow menu, there is a choice for Present Live. And I am going to just make sure that I have it set to anyone. So you can either have it for your organization or anyone. So I'm going to go right back into that. And if you want to have captions in your language of choice, you can visit this link at the top that's listed, ppt.ms/RACXMPFK. And so that you can get those captions on your device in the language of your choice. Since this is a global international conference, this is the best way I find to make this as accessible as possible. All right, so my session is called Be an Accessibility Ally. And I'm really excited to share my story with you today. And I hope that if you find anything interesting, that you will share it on X today and tag the ISTE community account who is running this amazing conference for us. And I would just love to hear your thoughts about what I have to say. So I'm going to go ahead, and as a teacher, I always get started with that standard on the board. I can't get away from it, even as a tech coach and now a STEM coach. So I am an ISTE certified educator and trainer. So of course, the standards that I lean into in my practice now are those ISTE educator standards. And as ISTE certified educators, or just educators in general, one of the things that we should be doing is making sure that we're advocating for equitable access to educational technology and digital content and learning opportunities to meet the diverse needs of all students. So I want this session to be accessible to you. So that's why I chose PowerPoint Live. And I hope that some of the things that I will show you along the way will give you some ideas of how you can bring accessibility and making sure your digital content that you give students is accessible, as well as the way that you design learning opportunities is accessible in your class. And then ultimately, what I hope happens is that as you adopt these practices, you also pass them on to your students. We're developing a generation of creators, and we want them to have these skills and knowledge of creating accessible content. And so we want them to learn how to do these things as well. So that is hopefully what you will walk away from this session thinking about and being able to do a little bit better tomorrow. All right, so I told you that I'm going to share my story, and this is the story of my disabled life. So I was born 40, almost 43 years ago in Arkansas, so a rather rural place. This is my dad. He was 19. He looks really excited in this photo. And this is me at a little over 1 year old. But you can see I'm still like rather infant sized because I was born with a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis. And so I had failure to thrive, which meant that I wasn't gaining weight and reaching the normal milestones a 1 year old would be reaching. And in fact, my parents, because they were in rural Arkansas, they were accused of not feeding me, not taking care of me properly. And it wasn't until we actually kind of got to the big city of Little Rock that they were able to diagnose me with cystic fibrosis. They put me on pancreatic enzymes so I could begin to gain weight. And they told my parents to just take me home and love me and to do this respiratory therapy on me just to make me comfortable, and that they really shouldn't expect me to live that long. And fortunately, I like to say that cystic fibrosis comes with a stubborn gene. And part of that stubborn gene comes from my parents because it's genetic. And so I have really stubborn parents, especially a stubborn mom. And she didn't just do these treatments when I was awake to keep me comfortable. If I was awake, she just did them. And they brought me back to the doctor 6 months later. And after being on the enzymes and getting respiratory therapy treatments, I was like a whole new baby. And so you can see me here a little bit older. I have that big distended stomach that many malnourished children get. I have very thin limbs in this photo. So that's common because CF is a genetic digestive as well as respiratory disease. So I don't digest food on my own. And so I have many of the hallmark features of a child maybe in a developing world, not getting all the nourishment that one would need. But otherwise, as I grew up, I kind of had a pretty normal childhood. You can see here, I'm a pretty sassy indoor girl. I love school. School was like my happy place. And I really had parents that, other than, being someone with CF and having to do some really medically necessary things every day, really treated me as pretty normal. I was very fortunate. My mom was a teacher, and my dad actually joined the military so that I would have, and we would have medical insurance to cover my medical needs. And I was fortunate that they really day to day treated me like a normal kid. But like I said, there was things that weren't completely normal about my childhood. This is my dad. You can see a little more happy now in this photo. And he's doing my respiratory therapy. So every morning and every night, he would use this percussor on 19 different positions on my lungs to help release the mucus that builds up in the lungs of people with CF so that I would cough it out. You can see right next to his leg, there's this little table, and some of those positions would involve me like laying over the table so that the mucus literally falls out and comes out of your lungs. So childhood, you can see, while pretty normal, did have some different moments. And I will say that this time that I had with my parents, watching Jeopardy in the evenings would be treatment time every night, and in the morning before school, it really helps you develop a really close and nice, intimate relationship with your parents. Not everyone is sitting for 2+ hours a day with their parents, directly giving them attention all the time. And so in a way, that's like a blessing of my childhood and a nice side effect of this situation. I also got to go to CF camp. So you might have seen a movie called 5 Feet Apart. It came out a few years ago about people with CF and not being able to be any closer than like a pool stick or 6 feet from each other. And those people, they just wanted to get one more foot between them because they were in love. Well, I was diagnosed and I had CF before that rule came out. And so when I was a kid, we actually got to go to CF camp. And so all the people in this picture, unless they were a counselor, have CF. And unfortunately, many of them are gone now because when I was born with CF in 1981, the life expectancy was 12 years old. But this was a really important time, and I think a really great lesson for myself in belonging and being able to be in a space where I identified with everyone. And so I understand the importance of that, and I want to create that in the spaces that I have students in, making sure everyone feels that belonging, because it's so important to your social development. I also, unlike many kids, went to hospital Christmas parties. This Santa was in a hospital. Unlike many kids, it's probably not a normal Christmas event, but definitely had a childhood in and out of the hospital, and children's hospitals really try to make things as festive and exciting as possible for a hospital. But then we get to school, and there were definitely some barriers to my educational experience. And not because I had any cognitive or needed any cognitive supports. That wasn't my issue. My issue is just that I was sick. And so oftentimes I would be out of school. People with CF, we do what's called a tune-up. So we go into the hospital for about 2-3 weeks at a time to get some really high-powered antibiotic medicines. We get bacteria that live in that mucus in our lungs that is very resistant to bacteria. And so every so often, we call it a tune-up, like you would tune a car up. You go into the hospital for 2 to 3 weeks. You get this IV antibiotics, and you come out and your lung functions a little better, and the bacteria are kind of held at bay till the next time you need a tune-up. And so that was a time, going in and out of the hospital as, an elementary school kid and a middle school kid and a high school kid, that definitely created some barriers, because when you go in the hospital, there is usually a hospital teacher, but like many hospital teachers, they don't know all the subjects that well. And especially as you get older, maybe their ability level to support you in statistics tutoring or calc tutoring is more limited. But additionally, like, it's just packets. You get a lot of packets in the 90s, a little worksheet packets, and that is just not very engaging and interesting. But I did have some really great experiences. And one of those was Mr. Gray. And in 8th grade, he came and read To Kill a Mockingbird, which they were reading in class by my bedside. And my life science teacher in middle school sent the owl pellet to the hospital. And I just have to say, if you want to see medical students get really excited, get an owl pellet out and they have them help you identify the bones and lay it out onto some construction paper, because they loved it. So I did have some really great experiences from teachers that really saw that this shouldn't be a limitation, that anything can happen in a hospital learning setting as well. But there were some of those barriers that I talked about. And one of those for me was PE class and the Presidential Fitness Award. And this was very popular in the late 80s and early 90s. And I could never get it. I was just never going to be able to get it. And adaptive PE was not yet in existence. So as a very studious kid who loved school, not doing well in a class was very hard for me. And I also had some teachers that also just weren't supportive. So again, I was in school in the late 80s, in the 90s. And unlike today, not everyone had a Stanley water bottle or an Owala or whatever the new hip water bottle is. We didn't have them. You could only get water at a water fountain. And so as part of my doctor's note, like, I had to have water. And I also got to sit by a fan because we did not have air conditioning in the school that I was in. And my teacher, 5th grade teacher, Miss Smith, said, "I don't know why you think you're so special." Well, I didn't think I was special. I just didn't want to pass out. I wanted to be able to do my schoolwork. And these two things were like necessities to make that happen in the classroom. And so the ableism in that statement was a barrier to me also emotionally, and made me not like this teacher or anything she had to offer because of what she said. So it's even small things that you could say, which this was actually kind of big, that can create those barriers in your classroom. So I want you to take a moment to think to yourself, what barriers have you created? And not intentionally. I'm not saying you've created barriers intentionally, but what barriers might there be to students who are medically fragile or have a IEP plan, or who are an English language learner? Those students who might already be facing barriers in their life, what other barriers might you have been creating in your classroom, and how might you think about eliminating them? And I hope that in what I'm going to share kind of moving forward, that you will get some ideas of some things that you can put into your practice to make your classroom more accessible. All right, so I've got to end my story on a good note, and that good note is December 19th, 2019. So I was 38 years old, and I got to start this drug that you see in the photo called Trikafta. It is a genetic modulator, and it actually completely, for me, fixes the issue at the cellular level. So my issue, my mutation with CF is that my protein channels in my cell membrane are twisted. And because they're twisted, chloride cannot go through the channel. So my cellular membrane does not work correctly, and chloride or salt does not pass correctly. Well, this pill, this miracle, untwists the protein for me. And so the chloride goes through. And now when I even take a sweat test, which is the usual diagnostic test for cystic fibrosis, I test as a normal person on this drug. And my life in the past 4 years, health-wise, has completely changed. And my lung function is not continually decreasing. I no longer have to do the 3 or 4 hours of respiratory therapies and medicines that I was doing every day. And now I can spend a lot of that time doing things like this and advocating for students with disabilities and sharing what I know about making accessible classrooms with other educators, so that you guys can bring these practices into your rooms and make it a better space for people with disabilities of all types. And this is extremely important to me. I think about a lot of the people in my community, my CF community, who, because of the severity of their CF, they hadn't maybe been able to focus on school. And maybe they haven't been able to maintain a job or build a vocation. And now they have this miracle, and they are figuring out what to do. And so they had some barriers. There's mostly health, but also like there were doctors in the past who would tell my parents, like, you don't need to worry about school. Like, she's not going to be here. So just like, don't worry about that. And some parents would have run with that and gone with that. But my parents, like I said, my mom's a teacher. She was not about that life. But we got to make sure that students with disabilities have as many opportunities, and we're not creating barriers for them. And I want everyone, because there's going to be more and more rare diseases like mine that have amazing miracles happen in the next 10 or 20 years. And if they haven't been able to put their education at the forefront right now, I want to make sure that teachers are doing as much as they can to support that student in whatever space they're at. So let's move on to talking about accessibility and making classrooms accessible. So the title of my session was, A11Y, and you're probably like, what is that? She said accessibility when she introduced me. What did that mean? And A11Y is the first letter and the last letter of the word accessibility, and the 11 letters in between. So whenever you see this hashtag A11Y, which looks, if you have vision, looks like the word ally, it is just shorthand for accessibility, and we use it on social media to write accessibility in a short way, as we like to do on social media. So when you see that, you can know that you're looking or seeing some information about accessibility. And accessibility is so important because 1 in 4 adults have a disability. And there will probably be a time in your life where you will experience a disability. We call it an acute disability. So it's not a long-term or a permanent disability, but maybe you sprain something, or you get an eye infection, you have to wear a patch. There can be lots of reasons you have acute disabilities. And so if we make our world more barrier-free for people with disabilities, it ultimately makes our whole world barrier-free for a lot more people than that. Because not all disabilities are visual, like the ones that you see here on the slide. So we can usually see someone who's an amputee or using a wheelchair, or having a guide dog. We can easily spot those people as disabled. But if people saw me on the road, they wouldn't know it. If you see someone who has depression on the road, you're not going to know it. If you see someone with a whole long other list of possible disabilities that are invisible, you're not going to know. And so we want to make sure that the world is accessible for everyone with a disability, whether you can see it or not. And then ultimately, it helps everyone. This, if you've never seen it before, is the Disability Pride flag. And I love it because each stripe on it represents a different classification or category of disability. So the red stripe is physical disabilities, the gold stripe is cognitive and intellectual, the white stripe is me, or the non-visible or undiagnosed disabilities, the blue is psychiatric, and the green stripe is the sensory disabilities. So look for that flag in places, or maybe even share it in your classroom, and let people know that you are an ally for accessibility and disabilities. And in the disability world, we like to say nothing about us without us. So these were, the image on the screen is a photo of a disabled girl climbing up the steps of the Capitol. And this was during the ADA demonstrations in the early 90s. And this phrase, nothing about us without us, developed out of those demonstrations. In that the fact is, nothing should be done for disabled people without disabled people being a part of it. So I'm going to give you a lot of tips and ideas of things to bring into your classroom, but ultimately you need to get the feedback and have students that are in your class with disabilities let you know what they need. So providing them space to do that is going to be really important. And when you're thinking about designing your space, involve them in the process. This is Ali Stoker. She is a Tony Award-winning actress. She won for her role of Ado Annie on Broadway. And she said, all of my life, people have focused on what I can't do, but I've lived my entire life looking at things I can do. And I think that's the case for a lot of disabled people, is that people look at us with a deficit mindset while we are looking at ourselves with the positive approach of the things that we can do. And so I hope that you go into your classrooms next week and have that approach with your disabled students, is that let's focus on what they can do, not what they can't do. And this is Amani Barbarin. She is a disability advocate. And I think it's really important to note, especially when we're talking about global perspectives, but even if in a just US-centric perspective, that Black, Indigenous, and disabled people of color experience the world at an intersection of racism and ableism. And no matter how uncomfortable it is to hear, we as a community must listen to and validate those experiences. We know from data that people who are of color have much more medical barriers. First of all, they face barriers systemically in the medical system. They've had a long history of being discriminated and actually abused in the medical system by using them for inappropriate testing and things like that. So it's really important for us when we talk about this to mention and keep those people in mind, especially those people in our classrooms, that they may be facing additional obstacles of being Black and disabled that I have not experienced. All right. Moving into accessibility. There are various accessibility needs that you might experience or see in your classroom. The first one is hearing. So people may be deaf or hard of hearing. They may have vision needs. So they may be low vision. Most people that are blind do have some vision. So they may see light, they may see shadows. Complete blindness is more rare on the spectrum of being blind, just keeping that in mind. Neurodiversity. So that is another group of disabilities that you may experience or see in your class. And that can be anything from ADHD to the autism spectrum. Those kind of all fall in the space of neurodiversity. Then we have language learners. While this is not a disabled class, I like to bring them into this group because, again, a lot of the accommodations or a lot of the accessibility things that we can build into the design of our lessons are going to help our English language learners as well. And then mobility. That is another classification of accessibility that may involve in needing some assistive technology, different tools for how the student interacts with their physical device. And I hope that your school or your district has access to an assistive technology specialist who can help that student access those tools that they need, showing them how to use them and leveraging them, because the average teacher is not going to know or have access to those tools. And then finally, the accessibility aspects of mental health. And that can really, we know, be variable day to day for people that experience mental health. And so keeping those things in mind that we can do for those people is going to be important too. But ultimately, accessibility is y'all, everyone. Everyone benefits from accessible things. We can see it from sidewalk cuts, where not just people with wheelchairs experience them, but also people with strollers or skateboards or scooters. Everyone experiences and benefits from that cut that is intended for a person in a wheelchair. So let's go forward in learning a little bit more about how we can make things accessible. There's going to be two parts that I talk about here. One is UDL and one is the WCAG or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, is really about the way we design our lessons, whereas the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are really about how we design and create web-specific or digital-specific content. And so let's dive into both of those for a bit. UDL first. If you're not familiar with UDL, I could do hours on it, but we do not have that kind of time. But there are three pieces to that framework. There is the engagement piece and providing students multiple avenues of engaging with content. There's the representation piece and really providing students multiple means of the language. So we're going to provide students imagery, text, audio, multiple ways that they can take in the content that we're wanting them to learn. And then finally, multiple means of action and expression. So providing students choice and voice and how they tell us what they know. That is the idea of UDL in a very small space. And this summer, new updated standards and checkpoints are coming out. So I would definitely, if you are a UDL-minded person, keep your eyes out for those updated standards, which are going to have more equity in mind as well, because there's definitely criticisms of pieces here. And so they've improved that to make things a little bit more holistic for students and keeping the whole student in mind as well. So engagement, this is where we really want to provide students multiple means of their interests. So we're really, when we're designing lessons, thinking about authentic opportunities to bring their real life experiences into the classroom. We're providing them opportunities and structures to support their effort over time. And we're also giving students possibilities for like self-regulation, like brain breaks, or ways to keep track of what they're doing, showing kids how to use a planner. So those are pieces of the engagement puzzle. Then representation, we're giving them multiple means to perceive the material, like I said, images, videos, audio. We're also providing them choices in language, so showing them tools they can use to translate languages if they need. And then finally, scaffolds for comprehension. This could be things like mind maps or other sentence stems, ways to help them comprehend and also share what they know in a structured way. And then finally, action and expression. So physical action, as I said, for students with mobility differences, they may need a mouse, or they may need a trackpad, or they may need to use an iPad, or they may need to use their voice to navigate their computer. So giving students choice in action and how they navigate their digital world. We need to give them choice in expression and communication. So not everyone needs to write an essay. Maybe someone's going to make a podcast, or someone's going to create a video or an infographic or a cartoon. We're giving them ways that they can choose how they want to communicate to us the information that they've learned in our classrooms. And then the last piece of action and expression is executive function and providing a lot of supports for that. And executive function is where we see a lot of deficits for students, especially those on the special education end of things. And so we need to start providing some of these skills, because we also know that a lot of people don't get identified into all of our classroom practices. So we shouldn't just have these things in a life skills class for our special education students. We should be showing elements of digital organization, and we should be showing elements of how to use a planning tool and how to use a task management tool to all of our students. So these technology pieces that we can use to support all students' executive function and bring those into the class are important. Some of those things are not taught directly. We just expect kids to know them. But if I think back to when I was in school and we got planners, we were taught how to use the planner. So we need to be teaching students how to use these digital planners. Or we had to keep a notebook of things in order in a notebook. We had teachers that had us do that. Now everything's digital files. We need to show students how to organize that and support all students' executive functioning skills. All right, so that was UDL in a very small nutshell. Let's move into the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines have a handy little acronym to help us remember. It is POUR, the word POUR, P-O-U-R, and it's that is the perceivable, the operable, the understandable, and the robust. Now, as teachers, we don't have very much control over that last one. That's really going to be left to our IT department to pick the right tools that are going to have a robust structure, so that we are picking tools that can use screen readers, that can use any of the other assistive technologies. That one's up to them. But we as educators and content creators, because all educators are content creators, we really have control over that perceivable, operable, and understandable. And so the perceivable, when you add images onto a document, add that alternative text, that is going to describe for a user who is using a screen reader what that image is that they cannot see with their visual abilities. You also need to hide links in words related to their context. For students that are using screen readers, and a screen reader is a tool that's going to read everything on the screen to a user because they are blind or low vision. If you just copy and paste a link, that link is going to be read to them. And if you even look at the link at the top of the website you're looking at now, that is going to be maybe a little bit hard to understand where that website is going to take them. But if you put the link hidden in the words that describe where they're going, that is going to be much more helpful. That also helps our neurodivergent students. So you can see where you're making a decision, a web content decision for blind or low vision. It's also going to help those who are neurodiverse and really need to know where they're going. So again, helps everyone ultimately. Captions and transcripts for videos, we want to provide captions, and for podcasts, we want to provide a transcript. So that's why I'm using PowerPoint Live right now, so that if you need caption support and it helps you to read along as I'm talking, I don't know about you, but I only watch TV with captions now. It is there, and I'm planned that in my design of this lesson that all students would have that, whether they needed it or not. Direct links for embedded materials. We may love some aspects of our learning management systems where we can just embed content onto the page and the kid doesn't have to leave their learning management system, but that can be a problem for our students using screen readers or our students on mobile devices. So again, a great example of how something designing better web content for disabled people helps ultimately all people, because so many people experience the web on their mobile devices now. You need to be really careful how you create tables and your use of color on pages. You want to make sure there's a good contrast of, not a light color on a light background. So that's why I choose to really present with black and white. It makes it as clear and contrasty as it can be. And then also using readable fonts. And then the operable, we're making sure everything's organized, and teachers are really good at that. We're using our headings or our paragraph styles to make sure that someone using a screen reader, again, can quickly get to the information that they want. And we're going to be very mindful of using GIFs, because some GIFs flash and move too much, and that can actually cause seizures for some people. And then again, an area that teachers are really great at is the understandable. So we're going to use plain language. I love the Hemingway editor to help me edit and clarify my writing. We're going to use consistent navigation, clear instructions, and make sure things are in a logical order. That's where we can really have some great control in the students' experiences, making sure it's very organized for them. So that was the P, the O, and the U. And ultimately, those are the things that make good web accessibility. So you're probably saying these last few minutes, what can I do? That was a lot. I now have a lot of things to go learn, and maybe so. So I have five leaving tips for you. 1, know how to use the accessibility features in your operating system. Whether you're an Apple user, a Microsoft user, or a Google Chromebook user, know the features. Know how to show students how they can live caption what's being read to them or a video they're watching. How they can turn on speech to text or text to speech. So these, there's a lot of things, are some of the things that you need to be able to know for your operating system. So those text to speech tools and the speech to text tools, and showing students how to use those, are going to be very empowering. And those are going to give students so much ability to control their digital environment. I talked about color contrast and some of these other things already, so I'm just going to keep going on. But these are things that you need to know how to do in your operating system. Number 2, bring creative assessment into your classroom practice. These are some tools that I love, and I love, this is where we really lead into that action and expression piece of giving students the opportunity to show us what they know in the way they want to show us. So Canva, Adobe Express, Book Creator, Genially, these are all creative tools where students can create anything from videos to books to podcasts to show us what they know. I love personally making choice boards for students so they can pick the tool and then the product that they want to make to show me what they've learned in that class lesson. And then also, what I said before, teach students to make that content that they're creating accessible as well. We are creating the content creators of the future. We need to show them how to make their content accessible. So I think if you go on TikTok, you see that kids are already very into this. The next generation is very into captioning their videos and making sure that they have the widest audience as possible. So I think students will be very open to learning these things. And you could even build them into your rubric as part of like the presentation maybe aspect of your rubric. Adding accessibility into that could be really powerful. All right, number 3. Make sure your newsletter is accessibility friendly. If you are a tech coach and you do a newsletter, make sure that you're following these good principles of accessibility. A really easy way to do that is I love a Wakelet and Flip combo. I make my newsletter with Wakelet. I can add captions and alt text, and if the person reading it wants to, they can use Immersive Reader to read it. And then I like to put a video at the top summarizing it below so that UDL piece of different representation is there and someone can get the content they want in the way that they want to get it. Number 4, use assessment tools built with inclusivity in mind. So make sure that your assessment tools can use that someone using a screen reader can use them, that they have read aloud functions for those who want it, and even better would be translation functions as well. So make sure you're picking good tools that have accessibility in mind when you pick them. And finally, if you are someone supporting teachers, make sure that you remember that teachers are learners too, and they have the wide variety of learning needs that just like a younger student would. So if you're a coach or a PD presenter and you are presenting and sharing with adults, keep these things of designing your lessons and your experiences in mind, because they're guaranteed to be in your spaces as well, people that need supports. All right, so I hope that you don't forget one thing at the end of this session, and that is to create with heart and be an ally for accessibility in your classroom, your school, and your district. Thank you so much.
Wow. I'm just trying to write furiously as you're talking because you have so many amazing tips. And I just want to shout out so many things that you said. So I'll give people a moment to put some questions in the chat if you have them.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go with what my intuition is feeling right now. I want to be this kind of teacher. And I think in my head, I'm writing it all down and I want to do all of it. And it just feels so overwhelming and impossible. And I love, 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 like that's where my head was. And then you're like, but here's 5 easy things to do. I thought, okay, this is so digestible. And I love that. So thank you. But if there are teachers feeling that way, where do we start? Is there a community that we can join to help us get over our fear? Because it doesn't matter. We do this for our students. It matters for them. It matters for us to be an inclusive teacher. So is there a community out there? There's all of my.
I mean, I think I love tapping into the assistive technology people. They have been doing this longer than anyone else. So those are great people to tap into if you have those in your district. But I would say also, ISTE Connect is a great place where there's lots of inclusivity minded people there. So if you are trying to ask a question of a problem that you're having in your classroom, I love using Connection. That would be a great place to go and ask other people questions. That might be a great place to start if we're just keeping ISTE in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for that. And you're right. Connect is such a good place for that. And again, I love the 5 simple tips because I was just writing all these notes and I'm thinking, okay, I need to do this and I need to do that and I need to do this. And it's just, there's so many things, but it's so important.
It's okay to start with a few. And that's where I say to really talk to your students, like what is going to impact the students that are in your room right now the most. So, the next time you lead class, put live captioning up on your classroom. You could even just put, a blank slide in your PowerPoint and do PowerPoint live and caption it and ask kids, did this help you? And then if no one's like, I didn't love it, like I didn't need it, then keep that in your tool belt, try it again.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely.
Also remember that not everyone's going to say they needed it. So just keep doing it, keep offering it. And then, after you've brought that into your practice, then try something, adding another layer. So just add it as layers that you can, it's impossible to do it all overnight. You're not going to suddenly have a magical, a fairy godmother of accessibility, just to boo you.
If only, right? If only.
Right.
Yeah.
So just
I love that idea.
anything, start asking what's going to impact them the most and do those things and then just keep adding more.
Yeah, I love that idea of one new thing almost, right? Let me just really and that's what, as a tech coach, I encourage teachers to do anyway. Just one new thing, right? You take this really something that feels very overwhelming and you just start with one new thing. And when you feel good about that, you add another one. So yeah, I love that. We've got a great question here from Michael Harvey's. In terms of UDL, how can you reconcile that edgy myth of learning styles with presenting information in different forms? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, learning styles are not a thing, but there is great variability in your classroom. So there are going to be students who are going to want certain types of representation one day, and the next day they're going to want the different type of representation. So one day I want to just listen to my lesson, while the next day I want to read it. And maybe the next day after that, I want to listen and read together. So if we're designing our lessons with all the choices in mind, whatever the student needs on that day is available to them.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. And then I think another good question that came in is, what about support for neurodiverse teachers? So if you are a neurodiverse teacher, what does support out there for you look like?
Ooh, I don't know, but I would love if there's anyone who is.
Right? Yeah.
To share. That is not my specialty, so I wouldn't want to say anything wrong, but now I want to know, and I'm going to probably go try and find someone who.
So we'll put a TBD or coming soon on an answer for that one.
I need to find someone who to talk to about and find out their experience and find out what's working or not working for them.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, if you're looking at like we're so as teachers, right? We're passionate and focused on our students right now, but in 15 years, all of those students will be adults. And like you
Yep.
said at the end, remember, teachers are these types of learners as well. So, it's kind of like we need to include everyone in that conversation.
Yeah, that really hit me when I became a tech coach and I was working with my world language teachers, because most of them were not native speakers of English. So most of them were themselves learners, English language learners. And that's where it really hit me, like, oh my gosh, like the things that I'm doing working with my English language learner students, my multilingual students, apply to my teachers that I'm supporting as well.
Yeah, and I think Michael says in the chat he has someone exploring this due to their own neurodiversity. So you guys should connect.
Yes,
we'll make sure you do that. And Margaret says let's do an AMA on Connect on this topic. So lots of things to come. I'm kind of a data nerd, and I was talking about this, like texting someone as you're talking, and I'm wondering, and I know you may not know this, but like what is the data? Like as a teacher, I really want like to go into my class and say, okay, everybody, how many are this and how many are that, and who likes to learn this way, and like I bet the data on some of the types of learning interests and needs and abilities that you're talking about would be a bit staggering. I think there's a higher need for it than we think.
Yeah, and I think that's like a great thing that any teacher can do to get the data for their own students at the beginning of the year, but also multiple points of the year. Because I think sometimes they haven't experienced the options. And so once they kind of experience the options, I mean, I know it's been like that for me in listening to podcasts, right? Until I knew that I could 2x them, like I was listening on 1x. But then once I found 2x, I started using it all the time, right? So it's like you don't know your preferences until you've experienced it.
That's right. So I think I love that.
We design our spaces to give students options and experiences, then they're going to know. So like do that assessment at the beginning, like that survey, but then mid-year or even like a third of the year, like, hey, now that you've actually like seen that you could listen or read, what are your preferences now? Or watch a video. So yeah.
And like you said, that could change every day. I mean, it does for me as an adult. Today, I might want to read a book. Tomorrow, I might want to listen to it, right? That is, as a side note, one of my favorite, like, icebreaker, if you want to use that term, questions. Do you believe that audiobooks count as reading? And it 100%. Is such a polarized, like, people are like, absolutely not. And I'm like, yes, it is. I learn best when I listen a lot of times. So anyway, Katie, this has just been incredible.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I think definitely audiobooks are books. For me, the answer is otherwise is ableist. So
right, exactly. Thank you. I actually learn quite a bit more if I'm listening and doing something else than if I'm just sitting down and reading. So anyway, but I love that. So Katie, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks. Yes, I'm getting some shout outs in the chat. Audiobooks to reading too. Thank you. Thanks so much for this insightful presentation. And thanks to everyone who participated in our chat today. There's going to be a couple links coming at you in the chat. So we'd love to know what you thought about today. So if you'd like to scan the QR code on your screen or access the link in the chat that's coming, you can have access to our digital template. What is something you learned? What's something you're going to try? I know I learned a bunch from this session. I wrote a lot of things down. I really want to know more about the R in the PORU, the poor. So I'm going to have to get with Katie about that later. But if you do share that online, make sure you're sharing hashtag ISTE Global and hashtag Global Impact so we can create a community. And like we said earlier, I think there's going to be more conversations about this, maybe an AMA Connect coming up soon. So as we are wrapping up, our actual whole live day of sessions. This is our last sessions. We have a couple of final reminders for you. If you haven't yet registered for ISTE Live, we encourage you to register today. If you're joining us in Denver, Katie and I will both be there. We were talking about it before we went live for this one. Be sure to check out the Global Collaboration Playground on Wednesday, June 26th. There are lots and lots and lots of great speakers coming to your Global Collaboration Playground to continue this discussion on global collaboration. If you're not coming to ISTE, or you are, but you just can't get enough of this conversation between now and then, you can join us on Connect virtually. That's our virtual space to meet, share, and collaborate with like-minded educators. So register for free, even if you're not an ASCD ISTE member, and let's continue this incredible conversation on global education. Last reminder is this is my favorite initiative we're doing, and it's a featured educator. So we are featuring 2 educators per month on our social media pages for just to highlight the incredible work they're doing in the classroom. Nominate yourself, nominate somebody you know in the chat, and we're gonna highlight them on our social media pages. So I'm going to bring on a couple folks here. This is our last session, and we thought we would just do an absolute incredible shout out. There's a whole team of us as ISTE community leaders, as the global team, making this Global Impact Conference happen. This is not everyone. This is just those of us backstage right now making this one happen for you. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us, for participating in the chat and on social media today. There are 50 pre-recorded sessions in addition to the live 13 sessions we recorded today. So there's a ton of content out there. Go watch it. It's going to be live for the next 2 or so weeks. Connect with us on social media. But just thank you to everyone for having such a great, incredible, wonderful day. Thanks to all. I hope you continue this conversation on global education. Have a wonderful day wherever you are. Bye, everyone.
Guys, bye, y'all.